In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this wooden barrel cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. This week I am working on a cake with the bottom tier looks like a wooden barrel, and it ends up looking pretty cool, and I want to show you how to do that. So let's get into the video. All right, to start, I have marshmallow fondant. I make my own fondant, and I only work with marshmallow fondant. So I will link my video on how to make this in the description. And this is almost 3 pounds of fondant. I'm doing this on a 6-inch cake. So I'm gonna take about half of this. So maybe 1.5 pounds of fondant. And now I have to put this in the microwave to warm it up to make it pliable to start working with it. So I'm gonna pop this in the microwave for about 15 seconds, flip it over, and do another 10 to 15 seconds on high power. All right, now it is soft and pliable. I have some Crisco I'm going to put on the countertop, and I just want to knead this together. I have some cornstarch here. Use cornstarch and not powdered sugar, because powdered sugar will make everything sticky. Cornstarch helps prevent things from sticking to the countertop. And if you see my videos, you know I add Tylose powder to all of my fondant. The Tylose powder, like right now, it's stretchy, it's not holding itself together, and the Tylose powder is really going to help it. It's just going to hold it together better. I have a video explaining, showing you how I use it and what it does to the fondant. I will link that below. So in this 1.5 pounds of fondant, I'm going to do about a half a teaspoon, maybe a little more. It's roughly a half teaspoon of Tylose powder, and I'm going to knead that together. And now I want to make this a really light tan color. How do I get light tan? I use 3 colors: brown, green, and gold. Brown, I don't know. I don't think Allen Tetriot makes these anymore, but I use AmeriColor, I use Chef Made, I use Wilton, I use other coloring, and I can link that below. But brown coloring tends to have a pink hue to it. So in order to cancel the pink, you have to use the opposite color in the color wheel. And the opposite pink is a red, and the opposite of that is green. So a little bit of green is going to cancel the pink hue in the brown. And then I'm going to add a little bit of gold just to warm it up. So when I'm trying to make a light tan, I do really, really teeny bits of color and then add more as needed. Just a nice size drop of brown. With the green, I am just using a tiny, tiny bit. You only want the green to cancel out the pink. You don't want it to be green. So if you put too much in there, it's going to start to look green. And then I'm just going to do about like a half or a third of what the brown is for the yellow. All right, so this looks more like a skin color, and what I want to do, I just want to warm it up a little more and make it a little more tan. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. And it still looks a little pink to me. So I'm going to add just a little teeny bit more green to cancel out the pink. And there, that's a nice tan color that I want to start with. All right, I have my cake. This is just out of the refrigerator, and it is iced in American buttercream. I have videos on how I ice cakes like this, and I will link that below. What I want to do is take a tape measure and just measure the circumference and the height of the cake. So this is 20.5 inches. Height is 4.75. So I want to cut the planks at least 5.5 inches tall, so I have room to trim them, and you will see. And then I just want to remember it was 20.5 inches in circumference. Going to put this back in the refrigerator. So now when I roll this out, I want to roll it really long, and I want to make sure it's at least 5.5 inches tall, so when I cut the planks that they will all be tall enough. So I just like to knead the fondant together a little bit before I roll it out. And when I roll something out really long, I just like to roll it into a log. And now I'm going to get some cornstarch down. And put this on top, and I'm going to roll it out. So I want to roll it out wide first and then long. So I want to get the length first. I can get my ruler here and make sure that it is 5.5 inches tall, and it is. And then I want to roll it out at least, so the circumference was 20.5. So I want to give it a little more extra, so maybe at least 25 inches long. Now I have my tape measure and I can measure how long this is. So this is about 26 inches long and it's 6 inches tall, so this is more than enough. So now I want to cut the planks. I just have a regular pizza cutter here and I'm just going to cut an even edge on the bottom. I'm going to get my ruler and I want the planks to be, I guess, about 1 3/4 inches wide. It looks like that'll be a good width. And I don't know why, that's just what I prefer. If you want the planks to be a little thinner, you know, you decide how wide you want them to be. So I have this ribbon cutter here, and what I will link this below. What you do, just unscrew one side, and then there's little pieces, these little discs. One side has a nubbin and one side doesn't. So you just take it apart, and then what I want to do is put it back together and try to get the distance between the two discs to be 1.75 inches. So I'm putting the little nubbin up, and then I'm doing a big one, a little one, and a big one, and then the other one with the nubbin in, and I don't know, I call it nubbin because of Chandler. And then take it to the ruler and measure it, and that's pretty good. I could do this without the nubbin on the other side. And then put the other piece on, and then I'm going to screw this top piece on. What I want to do now is, so you could do a little math. If this is 1.75 inches wide and the circumference is 20.5, I cheated, I did it on a calculator. So I did 20.5 divided by 1.75 and it's almost 12. So I need 12 of these planks at least. Maybe I'll do 13 just to have an extra just in case. And I'm going to do that, making sure I cut out 13 of these. And good, I have exactly 13. And now what I like to do, just because I like to have clean cuts, I want to take my fingers on either side. Can you see these jagged edges here? There's just fondant that it's just not clean. Take my fingers on either side and just run it over. I know this might be hard to see in the camera, but I'm just running it down either side, but I don't want to hold it up because I don't want to distort the shape. So I'm just holding it down on the countertop and running my fingers down either side. And I'm just going to do that for all of the pieces, just making sure that it looks just a little neater. Now, as I did that, these got distorted. So this is a yardstick, and what I did, I cut it in half so I can have two really long rulers. I'm taking my ruler on either side, and I'm just running them up and down the side, trying to make it straight, and then I just want to make it face me, because I'm going to add detail, and it's going to be a lot easier if it's facing towards me. All right, now what I want to do, I have a Dresden tool here. If you see my videos, you know this is my favorite tool. So it has a curve, it curves up on both ends, but this side is a little flatter and this side is a little pointier, and I just use it for everything. I think it's for veining flowers, but I use it for everything else because I don't make flowers. But what I want to do, you can use a wooden impression mat if you want to, and that's fine. I just think it looks a little better by doing this method. So I'm taking the thinner, pointier end, and I'm going to draw on it using the curve. I'm not sticking the very, very point in here. I'm using this curve against the fondant to draw lines in here. And what I want to do is just make some random lines. I don't want to press down too hard. And sometimes I skip, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do an entire line and then maybe a couple shorter lines. Right? And I'm trying not to have openings next to each other. And I'm trying to hold it straight. So I'm just making these lines in the fondant. So you decide how long you want them to be. Just try to make it straight and try not to have two openings. Like I don't want two lines to open here. I just think it looks better if there's no openings next to each other. And I'm going to do that for all of them. Okay, once that is done, I like to take the flatter, wider edge and kind of make little knots in the wood, if you will. So I just want to put the curved part down where the point is and just dig that in a couple different spots all over, just randomly. When I put cakes in cake boxes, I always cut the lids off, and I like to save the lids for stuff like this. So what I'm gonna do is just put these on lids. And now, once I have them back on the cake box lid, I just want to re-straighten them like I did before. So putting those lines in there and moving them, they got distorted. So taking my ruler and just going back and forth and straightening it, move it to the side, get the next one. Right, and just do that to all of them. All right, now I want to airbrush these. If you don't have an airbrush, you can get some petal dust. So I get some on here and then I tap it in the lid. And then what you can do is just get inside of the knots, and you can, you know, dust around the edges, you know, and add color this way. Ain't nobody got time for that. It will be very time consuming if you do it that way. However, it can be done if you can't invest in a paintbrush machine. This is definitely an option. It's just going to take a while to be able to dust everything. Or you can use an airbrush. I hope I wasn't saying paintbrush before. I'm losing my mind. I'm sorry. I'm busy this week. But anyway, so this is my Copy Cake Airmaster. I love this machine. I've had it for years. I will find it and link it below. It is a bit of an investment. However, once you have it, you're going to use it all the time. Trust me. So what you do, you pour the airbrush coloring in this little cup, and then you pull back the trigger. I find that you do not have to pull the trigger back very far. It sprays a lot even with a slight pullback, and you're going to use this dial. If it's turned all the way up, it's strong. If it's turned all the way down, it's a very light spray, and I like to go somewhere in the middle, and this is your on and off switch. I have brown airbrush color, and I also have some black because I'm going to deepen the brown after I do an initial spray over all of them. You must use airbrush coloring. You can't use regular gel color and add vodka or whatever. This brush clogs very easily, so you need to make sure you use airbrush coloring. I even have pearl airbrush coloring, and whenever I use that, this clogs. And it's made to go in the airbrush, and it still clogs. Just use airbrush coloring. I want to show you what I'm going to do before I actually do it. So with these planks, what I want to do is get a general spray of the brown all over, right? Just to deepen it up. I don't want to completely color it in because I want you to be able to see this lighter tan through. So I'm going to do that first. And then when I add a little bit of black to the brown, I'm going to make sure I get the edges, the sides, and get in some of these lines. And I will explain it as I go along. I always have a paper towel handy because it's just easier to have a paper towel as you're doing this in case you need to take a break. You can rest this right here. So get a little bit of chocolate brown coloring in here, and I don't want to fill it the whole way, like 3/4 of the way full. And I'm going to turn this on, and the dial is turned back 1/4 of the way. Now, I'm not even pulling the trigger, and it's spraying just a little bit. If I get really close, I can get a line, a really defined line. If I pull further back, it sprays. So that's what I want to do. I want to pull the trigger back slightly, and I'm just doing a slight spray, just rotating the brush over all of the planks. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of color variation in here, making sure that you can still see some of the tan color through the brown. And a little goes a long way with airbrushing. It's easy to overdo it. So stop before you think it's done and take a step back. I have this little cup here. I can link this below, but I just squeeze it on the side so I can easily pour it into the airbrush gun. So I want to empty this into this cup. And I'm going to add a little bit more brown. You want to have gloves on when you do this just because this stuff stains your skin. So that's a lot of brown in here, and I just want to add maybe 2 drops of the black, and swirl it around. I want to completely empty the rest of the brown that's in here by pulling the trigger all the way back. And I just want to refill this with the darker brown. So I'm pouring this in. So it's about 3/4 of the way full. I'm going to get a little closer with the brush so I can get the details. So I'm going to get up the sides. I want to get these little knots, and I want to get some of these lines. So testing the color. It looks good. So I'm going to go up the side. I'm holding it kind of close to the planks, and yeah, it's going to start to shift around, so you got to hold it in place a little bit. Good. So now I did up the sides, and then I just want to get in these little knots, and I am not even pulling the trigger back at all. I'm just letting whatever's coming out of the gun without me pulling it back help me color this in, and then get close and get some of the lines. So you just want to get some variation and depth into your pieces. Same thing. Go up the sides, pulling the trigger back slightly. Get all of the knots and some of the lines. And I'm just going to do that for all the pieces. Really? Well, that sucks. So you got to be careful when you're doing this so you don't do what I just did and frickin' spill all over. So I probably can't use this piece, although I might be able to cut off that piece and use a little bit in the end depending on, we'll see. So what happened is I was moving this around too much and this came out of the cup. So you just have to be, be careful. And then spraying again, pulling back and spraying again. Now I have my water on high. I'm turning the dial all the way up, pull the trigger all the way back to empty the cup, and then run very, very hot water through the cup to clean it out. Let me just dab this. I can't believe I did that. Stupid. Now I can't use this part of the plank, but 12 should get it done, and this is just going to be an extra one. So hopefully I won't even need this one. That's why I always make extras. So I'm going to let this sit for about 5 to 10 minutes so the airbrush coloring can dry and it won't be shiny or anything. So I'll be able to handle it, and then I'll put them on the cake. All right, now I have my cake. It is just out of the refrigerator. So the icing is solid, and I'm not going to mess it up when I do this process. I have the front of my cake here, and the way that I figure that out is that it's the most symmetrical and it looks the best, right? Because my cakes aren't perfect, and look, there's a little part here that got messed up, so that's going to be the back of my cake. So I want to start at the front of my cake. I have my dried planks here, and I have a little bit of piping gel and a paintbrush. You can also use water if you'd like. I have some scissors. And what I want to do is just evenly cut. Now I'm starting in the front and I'm going to go to the back. I want to find my favorite planks and put them in the front. Obviously, I'm not going to use that one that had the big splatter on it. So what I want to do is just cut and make sure you're cutting even. Trim the bottom off. And then I'm going to hold it up here. Now, where do I want it to end? Obviously, I don't want it to be this tall. Let me cut a little bit of that off. So I do want it to hang over the top just a little bit, but not this far. So I'm probably going to cut it right around here. So again, just taking my scissors, make sure that it's straight and not on an angle. Unless you want it to be on an angle, but for this I can't do that. And that's still a little high. And that's good. I want it to stick over about a 1/2 inch over the top. All right, so this is the first plank that I like, and this is the very front of my cake. I'm going to get some piping gel on the back, but I'm gonna not put it at the very part, the part that's gonna stick over the top. So I did not get any piping gel up here. I'm gonna stick it against the cake and just try to make sure that it is straight. I have the next plank that I wanna use. I'm gonna put that to the side. I have my scissors here and I just wanna get low and make sure that I'm cutting it so it is even with the next one. I just found that that's the easiest way to get them to all be the same size. Get a little piping gel on the back, not all the way to the top, and just make sure that it is connected to the one next to it. Now I'm gonna go to the other side because I wanna start in the front and make my way to the back of the cake. So I'm lining this up. I can make a little notch here where I want to cut. And I actually have these angled scissors that I like. I could see if I could find these and link them below. It just makes it a little easier to cut. And if I get low, I can see that this one is just a little too high. So I'm going to take it off and trim it. Put it back down, look, make sure that it's even, right? And then glue it with the piping gel. And now I can see that this is a little bit on an angle here, and I just want to trim this so it's a little more straight. You getting the hang of it? So you can see, I'm just trying to make these as even as possible. So I'm going to keep doing one side and then the other, or you can go all the way back to the very back. I know the back is where this ugly point is. So just go to the back and then start in the front and go to the back. That way everything is nice and even and pretty in the front. I can actually use half of this piece to go in here. Now, if you look at it, it's pretty even the whole way down. I'm going to start wide. So I'm going to cut it up this line right here, which is a little wider than I'm going to need it. And just put it up against here and see how it fits. Ooh! Yo. That's almost perfect. It's just sticking out a little bit here. So I just need to trim a little bit more off. That's why it's nice to start big, and then you can always trim some off. You can't put it back once you trim it off. So I'm trimming off just a teeny bit. Look at that, fits perfectly. And again, making the notch where I can cut it. Now I know where the front of my cake is because this little smaller plank is the very back of the cake, so I could just always try to find that, and then I know complete opposite is the front. And now I'm just going to refine it with the airbrush. All right, so this is a 6-inch cake. I have a 6-inch cake pan here, and I put it in the middle, and you can see that there's some cake sticking out of the side. So flip it over, and this pretty much covers it. So I want to put this on top of the parchment paper face down. Take a pen, trace around the edge. The pen might not transfer. There it goes. Ah, it did. And just cut on the inside of the pen to cut this circle out. Now it fits in there. So this parchment triangle is going to prevent the icing on top from getting any airbrush coloring on it. And now I just want to refine. I still have this coloring in here from before, the brown with the black added. So I'm going to pour that back in here. Filling it about half to 3/4 of the way full. I just want to refine some of the coloring that I did before. I'm going to take a dry paintbrush and just brush off any of the cornstarch that may be sticking to the planks. Now what I want to do, I really want to get in between all these lines, so I'm going to do that first and then just go around and add any more coloring that I feel needed. I'm turning the dial from the highest back to the left about 1/4 of the way, and then holding my paper towel and just getting in between all the planks. And then maybe I want to try to cover up any imperfections, any watermarks. I can get in the knots a little more or deepen some of the lines, right? Just take a step back and look, but you still want the variation in color. So you want to be able to see the tan, but also some of the medium brown that we added and the darker brown. And it's all just about trying to get the variation in the color. I want to put my glove on here because it can get a little, it can stain my hands. What I want to do is just press down the parchment paper so it doesn't lift. And I want to try to spray the inside. Now this is just a little extra of me, but I want to spray the inside of the planks just so they are the same color as the outside. I don't need to do a full spray. What I want to do is spray down on the top to get the top edge. And then just get a little bit on the inside. I don't want to drench it with color, but just give the variation in color. And then cleaning this out like I did before. So I'm going to lightly press this back, make sure that these are straight up and down. It's not too wet because I wasn't drenching it with the color, so I can touch it with my hands. If this was shiny, you'd know that you can't touch it with your hands yet, but it is pretty much dry. So now I want to stick this back in the refrigerator and then I will put on the little details. All right, now I have some black marshmallow fondant and this already has Tylose powder mixed in with it. I popped it in the microwave for about 10 seconds to get it pliable. And again, I want to cut 2 strips to wrap around the top and the bottom of the cake. So I just remember the cake was 21 inches long, so I want to roll it out at least 21 inches long and about 2 inches high. I'm going to flatten it and then try to get the height first before I get the length. All right, I have my cake just out of the refrigerator. So I want the ribbons to be about this thick. So I just want to measure that. So that is about 3/4 of an inch thick on the top and the bottom. And I have my ribbon cutter, so I want to do the same thing. Unscrew the end. And now I want to make the center part a little smaller. So sticking some of the pieces down at the bottom that are not going to get used. And then I'm just putting it together and then measuring it to see, and that's actually perfect. Actually, I want it a little smaller. So I'm going to put the nubbin down. There we go. Doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to cut 2 ribbons. And again, like I did before, anytime I make cuts, I'm going to take my fingers down the sides and just smooth it out, making sure that there's no ugly edges. And if you want to, you could take the rulers again and just straighten it out like we did before. So in order to put these on the cake, I have an X-Acto knife so I can trim it to the size. I have some Crisco, which can help adhere it to the cake, and also some piping gel like I had before. Crisco is very forgiving, so if I put it down, I can lift it off and put it back down if needed. Before I do this, I just want to wet a paper towel and wipe the board because look, you can see a lot of the airbrush coloring is on the cake board and I just want to clean that off. However, I don't want the wet paper towel to touch the planks because I don't want to transfer a water image or any water on there. However, we are covering the very bottom, so it doesn't matter, but just for future reference, if you're not going to cover it, you don't want the paper towel to touch when you're cleaning the board because you just don't want to mess up the fondant. All right, now to start, when I do this, I'm going to start at the back with this little plank here. And what I want to do is get a little piping gel across the very top, just on the back 3 pieces. And then for the rest, I'm going to use some shortening. And I don't want it to come down further than where the ribbon is going to go. So just in this top 1/2 inch of these planks. I'm putting down some Crisco. So I have my ribbon here and I just cut the end off so it's straight. Going to start at the very back plank and put this on so it comes up to the top, and just slowly turning the board or the turntable and trying to put this around the entire thing, trying to keep it straight. And where it meets, I could just take my X-Acto knife and cut straight up and down and push it together. And now I can refine it. So I have a little palette knife and I can get even and start to push this up and down so it looks like this is pretty straight across. That's why the Crisco is nice, because it's very forgiving and it's gonna hold it here. However, I can still shift it. If it was piping gel or water, it would just hold it in place and I wouldn't be able to make these little adjustments. So it's coming down right here, if you can see. So I'm pushing it up just so this line looks even the whole way across. And that looks good. Now I want to do the same thing for the bottom. Starting in the back, a little bit of piping gel across the back 3 planks, staying very low, just trying to keep the shortening towards the bottom of the planks. And same thing, get my ribbon, cut the end off so it's straight, start in on the very back plank. Same thing, I'm getting the palette knife and now I'm getting low and I'm just pressing it down so it looks like it's even the whole way across. Perfect, and here is your wooden barrel look to your cake. So there you go. How cool was that? I love doing this wooden barrel effect or these wooden planks on cakes. I just feel like it's simple-ish, right? And it ends up looking so cool. So a few things about this. I totally forgot to say when I was rolling out the fondant how thick I rolled it out. So I took a picture. I'll put it over here so you can see that each plank is about 1/8 of an inch thick. So you don't want them too thick, don't want them too thin. You have to find your happy medium, like I always say. Also very important is to straighten out the planks with those rulers. Making sure everything is straight when you put it on the cake is just going to make your life so much easier. It won't gap in between and it'll just come together so much better. And I will put the finished product over here. So on the bottom tier, I printed out an edible image of the Hennessy label, and I do have a video on how I do that. I can link that below, how I use edible images. And the top tier is covered in black marshmallow fondant. I just posted a video on how I do that. And also the name Tyrell that I made, I have videos on how I cut names and paint them gold and everything. So I will link all those in the description as well. And the topper too. There's videos. I have videos on how I do all these techniques except the cigar. And I know someone's probably going to be like, oh, how'd you make this cigar? And I can't film everything right now. I wish I could, but just look in the description and you'll see any videos on how to do the other techniques in this cake. So I think that is it. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. And you can follow me on my socials and my website, and everything is listed in the description below as well. And if you want to stick around, you can watch these 2 videos next. Why'd I do that? And hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.